All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the MSP Initiative live coming to you every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and that is now. We have some new guests on the MSP Initiative that haven't joined us before. Before we get to them and give them a chance to introduce themselves, just some, kind of housekeeping, if you would. All of our sessions are available at mspinitiative.com underneath of the sessions tab. Every session we've ever done is there. You can rewind, fast forward, download, share, whatever works for you. So this session will be there like every other session. And then we also have two other things on mspinitiative.com, which is our Channel Strong show, our Channel Strong tour, which we just finished our Northeast tour. We're coming into our Southwest tour coming up here at the end of September. And then we have our monthly MSP prize giveaway, which a bunch of vendors just kind of throw some prizes in the hat, and no purchase necessary. Just need to raise your hand, throw your name in the ring, and you might win, kind of like a lottery ticket. So you see that mspinitiative.com. So that's all the housekeeping. Let's get on to the good stuff. We have Eric and Christina from Egnyte joining us today. And I'm going to let both of them give their background on how they got into the IT industry and, their kind of journeys. And then we'll talk a little bit about Egnyte and what they're doing and just kind of the greater industry as well, because there's never a lull. I feel like there's always something happening. So without further ado, I'll hand over the mic to Eric and Christina, whichever one wants to go first. Tell us about yourself. How did you get into IT and the technology industry, and what brought you from that point till today?
Well, I'm going to let Christina go first because, first of all, ladies first. But also, I don't know if we have time for my whole story, George. I'm old.
You're not
summarized, but all right.
Okay. All right, I'll go first. So I'm Cristina Carretero. I'm the channel marketing leader at Egnyte. I've been there for about, 9 months now. But I've been in the IT industry pretty much all of my career. I've worked for IBM, I've worked for Rackspace. So I've always been doing IT, but everything marketing. And I guess I'm versatile because every marketing position that a marketer could have, I've done it. So I always love helping partners with their marketing and trying to get them to grow their business and just kind of helping out sales enablement, all of those type of things. So that's part of my exciting. And I don't know.
Well,
that's
welcome.
me in a nutshell.
No, it sounds like you had several stops. So you're definitely not a newbie to IT land for sure.
And I'm Eric's partner in crime too, right?
That's true. So she doesn't give herself nearly the credit. She is literally my, well, I shouldn't say partner in crime because there's no crime going on, but she and I are, kind of attached in terms of what we're doing for partners and making sure that Egnyte is being the best partner it can. Now, for my story.
Yes.
Of course, a lot of people already know this, but
you'd be surprised. There's some people may have never run into you.
I know. I actually started consulting with clients, helping them with their computers when I was about 14, 15 years old. Literally having my mom drive me places to go help people with their computers. And so then I went to college. I got a degree in computer engineering. Worked for a computer shop while I was in school, and they were kind of a depot repair. People would bring their computers in. Didn't do a lot of consulting for the small to medium-sized business, which traditionally the MSPs serve. So I saw a niche. I jumped at it. My wife was a little bit annoyed with me because I don't think we had even been married a year when I did this to her, but and starting a business can be a little bit traumatic. But anyway, it worked out well. Did that for about 10 years and then spent about 2.5, 3 years as the CIO, COO of a couple of small manufacturing companies. So in terms of internal IT, I've done a little bit of that as well. And coming off of that is when I decided to go MSP. I kind of had the perfect situation. I had a former client come to me and say, hey, we're splitting off from this other company and we really want you to come and do our IT. We even have this office building where we'll give you an office. I was like, how do you turn that? You don't turn that stuff down.
Yeah, yeah.
So I spent 7 years doing MSP, and back then, we're talking about 2007 is when I started the MSP business. And so really more hybrid, right? We're really just trying to get recurring revenue, not doing what I would call a fully managed service plan like we would, consider it today. But then evolved. So I had a range of clients doing hybrid, all the way up to fully managed by the time I sold that business. Sold the business to go to work for a company called GFI, which is now, through lots of name changes and being bought out, recently just changed its name from SolarWinds MSP to Enable and became a separate company. And most recently over there, when I left there, I was the head operations nerd. So I was basically helping MSPs determine the best practices for optimizing their operational efficiency using whatever tools. So that's kind of it in a nutshell until we get to today. And today, I'm here at Egnyte, and I have two roles. I'm the director of MSP community and enablement. So the two sides of that are, obviously participating in the community, doing things like this, going to shows, developing a community around Egnyte. One of the things we've done very recently is we've just stood up a partner portal, which in addition to, the stuff you would normally see like forums and an ideas page and blog articles and stuff like that, that's where we have all of our training and our co-marketing for our partners, stuff like that. So that's part of it. And then the other part is the enablement piece, which is where I go in and I help our partners to get engaged with Egnyte, learn how Egnyte works, how to deploy it, how to sell it, stuff like that.
Okay. So that's a lot. So let's rewind for
I
a
know.
second. Number one, thanks for being somebody that's trying to, continue and build up MSP community. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of talking heads out there, especially now, right? Because everybody's been stuck indoors for at least a while. But there's plenty of business out there for all of us, and there's still a lot of people out there that are like, hey, everybody's my competitor. And like, once you get past that, moat and alligators and drawbridge, there's a lot of people out there helping a lot of other people succeed in this world, this sandbox that we all live in. And I think that, and we'll talk about some of these topics during the rest of the hour, but like, there's a lot of stuff that's happened that really force people to either have to grow up or get out is probably the best way to say it, right? Because it's just getting harder to play in the sandbox. But we'll get to that in a second. So I really appreciate you guys for trying to continue to build that community aspect, because it's desperately needed. And the more of it out there, I think the better we all are. So that's number one. Number two, there's a lot of people who still don't know, like, Egnyte to a lot of people is either a name they haven't really heard of, for a long, recently, or really have only heard of it recently, or they may just not know at all. Who is Egnyte? They've really just shown up in MSP land, at least visibly, over the last couple of years. Can you give us an idea of what the company is about?
Sure. So the company's been around for 14 years this year. So we've been around for a long time. Really only had a channel program for the past 2.
Mm-hmm.
And what we started out as is a cloud file sharing solution, right?
Okay.
Think Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, those types of things. But the difference is that Egnyte looks and acts almost exactly like your on-premise file server. So you get a map drive letter, you get NTFS style permissions, makes it super simple for you to be able to transition, especially a small to medium-sized business, right? From that traditional file server over to a cloud-based product. But then that also opens up all of the additional things that you can do with a cloud-based product. Makes it easier to share files, collaborate, makes it more secure to share files because you're no longer sharing attachments, you're sending links, you can have those links expire, all of those different fun things. Now, on top of that, in the last couple of years, we've added on this data governance and compliance type of package. And what that allows you to do is now add on top of that file storage or on top of other file storage repositories, because The protection piece doesn't just fit on top of the Egnyte file storage. It sits on top of Azure, OneDrive, Box, a lot of different data repositories.
Mhm.
And that allows you to do things like classify your data, know where things like PII, PHI, stuff like that is, and then act on if that data is not in the right place. In addition to that, you can do things like detect ransomware. You can roll back from ransomware. There's just a whole bunch of things that we do, not only to provide you that convenient, easy access to use your data, but also to protect it as well. And one of the things that I really like about it is that it is kind of that thing that you don't see a whole lot, where it makes it easy and more secure all at the same time, which is hard to do in this industry, and something that we struggle with, right? I mean, you look at 2FA, how hard is it to get everybody on 2FA? Because it's just that much harder.
It's true. It's like the never ending argument. Hopefully ending at some point, but right now, never ending argument. Okay. So generally speaking, a kind of like distributed file share sync tool with, a lot of security aspects to it, a lot of, compliance aspects to it, and ultimately makes it a lot easier to, kind of bring it all together in a distributed world. Does that make sense? Does
Right.
that sound right?
Yep. And it also solves a lot of unique case situations as well. So because it's highly configurable, and it's easy to, like, if you need HIPAA compliance,
Mhm.
you get the protect package and you check a box, and it's going to help you classify that data, know where that data is, and suggest things that you can do to protect that data better. If you have, say, a construction company where you have very unique situations. Construction companies are unique in a couple of different ways. Number one, they have to collaborate a lot. Number two, the files that they collaborate on are typically large. Think AutoCAD files, big punch
Yeah.
lists, things like that. And then the third one that really socks them is the fact that a lot of the job trailers that they're working in are in remote sites that don't have great internet.
Yeah.
So we actually have solutions where we can put a virtual appliance on site, to overcome those low bandwidth situations. And specifically in terms of construction, we have integrations with a lot of construction line of business software. So not only are we providing that file sharing tool, but we can also plug into the workflow of the business. So we have a lot of different things like that. The signature applications, DocuSign, Adobe Sign, things like that, you're used a lot in legal and real estate and things like that. So we have integrations with those as well. And then
But so I
go
gotta
ahead.
ask the probably question you get asked all the time, which is why this over OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, Box? I mean, there's a lot of solutions out there, and especially with 365 and how invested MSP land is into that stack, right? Like, it's the argument, hey, I'm getting it as part of the solution. I don't have to really go extra. Why look down this road when I already have this?
Absolutely. It's a question we get all the time. So with those traditional solutions, OneDrive, Dropbox, et cetera, typically they sync to the local machine, right? So step one, all of that data is now on a local machine that could be compromised. With
Sure.
Egnyte, the default posture is the only files being cached at that moment on the local machine are the ones that you're actually working on. So you don't have this vulnerable repository on the local device. Now, we do have an exception for that. If you need to work on a file, say while you're on an airplane and you don't have internet access, you can synchronize an individual file or an individual folder so that you can have that offline capability. It's there, it's just not the default. Then
Okay.
the other piece that I kind of pointed out before is just the ease of use. Instead of it being the OneDrive or Box user-centric type of file structure, it mimics that file server structure or organizational centric file structure almost exactly. So, and you can even use, you can use Azure AD, and other SSOs to, be able to access it and integrate. So it makes it super simple to deploy. You can even, like, if you want to deploy it with your RMM tool, there's command line features where you can automatically have it go in and map the right drive letters, all that kind of stuff to make it super simple for the MSP, to reduce costs, as well as make it easy for the client, because you don't have to retrain them on how to use OneDrive.
So, but what about the people who have invested in OneDrive and they've already gotten the message that, hey, Microsoft really doesn't back up your stuff past like 30 days. And now you need a second software or vendor to back up what's there. And like, so how do you back up Egnyte? If you're using Egnyte as your primary solution, is there a need to do that? How does that work?
So there is not, because we keep multiple versions of your files so that you can simply roll them back. Or you can access those old versions just to look and see what's different between, 2 or 3 different versions. Now you can set that. You also have a combined trash. So if anybody within the users deletes a file, the administrators can go back in, and they're the only ones who can actually pull it back out of the trash or permanently delete it. So, you can set a lot of those things to avoid the problems of accidental deletion or files being corrupted or more than one person working on a file at a time and causing a problem. It's very easy to get back to those other versions.
So what about, is there, like, even with the OneDrives and then the Google Drives, right? There's a file size limitation, there's a file name limitation, there's a number of files that you can have. There is a maximum limit somewhere up there. Where are there some of the pesky stuff? Or just generally, like, how do you manage the amount, like with, if you do a 365, right, to give you that 1 terabyte of space per user. But like, how does this work on your side? Is it space at the entire organization level? Is it space at the user level? What are the limitations, especially in the examples that you just mentioned? What if I have a graphic design firm that does a lot of video and all of a sudden they're just balloons, or, like you said, CAD files that are gigs big or whatever it is?
Yeah, so there are, I wouldn't say they're file size limitations, but there are considerations that you have to make, right? Because once you get to a certain file size, getting stuff off of the cloud becomes more and more difficult. So you do have to worry about that, regardless of what cloud file-based service you use. Sure. Now, in terms of the like per user or global storage quota, with Egnyte, it's a global storage quota. So it's just like your file server, where you can go in and it's whatever file server size, whatever the hard drive size or quota you set is on that file server. So, it's a little bit easier to manage. One of the problems with things like OneDrive is that you have a situation where you have one user's data here, another user's data here, and a lot of times you'll actually have duplicate data all over the place because they'll put it in their own OneDrive. With the more traditional model, you have one silo of data, so there's a much better chance of you maintaining the right file versions in the right place and everybody using the right version of that file.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So obviously, I'm asking questions I'm sure come up in any phone call, but what about the whole, does Egnyte sell direct versus through the channel? Is there a situation where there could be a conflict between the partner and the vendor? Like, if I sell this to my downstream end customer and they turn around and call Egnyte for some reason directly, like, how does that loop get closed?
So obviously we've been around for 14, only done channel for 2. So it's pretty obvious we sell direct, right? We do have, we have in-house, things in Salesforce and whatnot to try and keep us from having channel conflict. We do, in that new partner portal I just mentioned, we do have a way for MSPs to register deals. It's completely optional, because I know as well as you do, George, all of the horror stories of vendors who require deal reg and then those vendors going after those direct customers. So
bad.
Yeah. So we've made it completely optional, but it's there. so that especially if something does come up, we can say, no, the MSP registered this deal. So, this is how we have to handle this.
No, it's good. I mean, that's the first thing I'm sure, like, because it happens so darn often. So Brent pops in here and asks a quick question. He's like, so how many versions of these files are you keeping? And I'm going to expand on his question. Do you get to set that limit? Does that affect your space allocation? How does that work?
So you do get to set it. Here's where, because, yes, I am a tech guy, but I'll be the first one to admit I have not been able to do the deep dive into all of the specifics of numbers like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's at least 99 versions, but I believe I was actually corrected on that once and told that it was 999. Now, as far as the storage space, that's where I really don't want to say, how it affects, because that I'm really not sure on. Okay. I believe that because we use Delta technology, that it's not like a doubling for every version. It doesn't take whatever the file size is. I believe, and please talk to a rep about this, but I believe we use the Delta technology, so it's not as bad.
999 versions with some deduplication, that's pretty good. I mean, if as long as you're not paying for 998
right, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
But obviously, in any cloud file storage situation, storage is where the cost is. Yeah. So, no,
100%. Could, so a lot of the people out there, especially in Microsoft land, start to get, I'm sure people have progressed down this road, but I'm going to throw it out there just as a basic question. Hey, OneDrive is good when you're talking about individual user files, but then you get forced into SharePoint or Azure files, right? Depending on which direction you want to go when you're trying to replicate the file server. And then some people still try and kind of align this and cohabitate it, if you would, with still an on-prem file server, right? Doing file shares. Is there a hybrid model where you can marry it to an existing file share server and still get the benefits of the kind of decentralization effect, or no?
Yes, absolutely. So in that construction example that I gave earlier, that's exactly the case. We can have a synchronized copy of that data on site that is constantly being synchronized with the cloud. And it's asynchronous. So if it's a bad internet connection, like in the case of the construction job site, it's as real time as it can be, depending on the internet connection.
Okay. Fair enough. And then this thing can handle, these, again, example of like a graphic design, right? With, say it's a video file that's 10 gigs, right? I mean, obviously the internet's got to do its job, but that could be a while to get up and down, I assume.
Right. Now, one of the things with the deduplication, though, is that we're only transmitting what's changed. So if you take, a 10 gig file, but you only change a couple of blocks to that file, we're only transferring the blocks.
Okay. Well, it would definitely be cool to see it in action for sure. I mean, because there's a lot of, especially like the data is getting larger, right? And then you're playing games with people trying to store stuff in Amazon or Google or Azure. And then, all of a sudden part of the problem is the cost of transferring the data and the cost of storing the data is what seems to balloon into making it, whether it be affordable or not affordable, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple of things, first of all, I do want to say that like media companies and content companies are a major niche for us. We solve for those very well. But it's really, these companies that need to transmit and, share this much data across. One of the things is collaborating with links, because you're not sending the entire file. So you don't have file attachment size issues anymore. Also, if I'm a content, creator, a designer, whatever, and I create a design and send a copy as an attachment to a client, but then make a couple of changes 2 hours later, but it's 3 hours later before they get a chance to look at it. The version that they're looking at is outdated. When I send a link, it goes straight to, that version. Another thing that is very popular when we're talking about companies like that have large file sizes, but also have a situation where they need to keep files for a long time, but may not need to touch them. We have a separate archiving,
there it is,
solution that, it utilizes cold storage so that it, is not as expensive.
That's great. I mean, first thing came to my head, I was like, yeah, people save stuff forever, which brings us kind of into the current events, because I'm going to kind of intertwine this now with you, Eric. It's not a curveball. It's a legit question. The security thing is definitely at the top of mind, right? Oh, yep. I'm going to pause for a second because Brent has a question, so it fits right in. So keeping up to date is fast, but onboarding is time consuming and needs expectation set. I don't know if that's a question mark or a statement.
Nope. So I know exactly what he's talking about. And we are in the process of making, because mainly what you're talking about there is you're talking about a migration situation, because the deployment is actually pretty simple. Getting people up and running, connecting them to the file store, that's not a big deal. Configuring it to the way you want it to work, that's not a huge deal. The migration is where it can get tricky. We're in the process of developing a new migration tool that will be especially helpful for the most common case, which is migrating an on-premise file server to Egnyte, right? But then also you have the situation where you may be migrating a cloud instance to Egnyte. That's where it gets especially tricky because there's lots of moving parts there. We do have a professional services team that can help with that. There, obviously, with most professional services teams, there is a charge. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to get and set that expectation more upfront as to, if you're quoting a customer for moving data from here to here, this is what you're going to need to do. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, you're going to need to engage our professional services. And at that point, you can go ahead and put the cost for the professional services into whatever you're quoting the client, right? Because there's a lot of expenses they're not going to have if they're not, say it's a server refresh, they're not having to buy a $5,000 to $15,000 server, right? So there's some dollars there that makes sense to put into this migration. I mean, you'd have labor involved in migrating from one physical server to another physical server.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of the same. You just have to, he's exactly right. You have to set the expectations in the right place. We've also set up, because our professional services team has gone through a recent evolvement and much more, interested in helping with the channel focus. And so we've actually created kind of a rapid onboarding managed services package for professional services. And what it does is it for one flat price, it's not an hourly price, it's a flat price. They will take them through not just their first migration, where our professional services team will actually walk the MSP through the migration, but actually do most of the heavy lifting themselves. But then we'll also go through their second migration. And while the MSP is doing the heavy lifting of the migration, they get the supervision of our professional services team. So we are really trying hard to make it as easy as possible. Now, those are brand new things, so I don't expect people to know that they're out there yet. But certainly if they had talked to their partner account manager, hopefully that's something that they would have been offered.
Okay, there you go. Brent says, nice touch. Okay, so back to where I was headed to in security land, which is, hey, we've heard in the past, right, where one person does something bad and it saves to their OneDrive, for example, and then all of a sudden their OneDrive gets ransomed, right? It's happened. I'm not saying it's every day, but it's happened. And security's at the top of mind, right? We know why, all the current events and the headlines. So how does that not happen here then?
So files can still get encrypted because there's still access to those files from the desktop. So they can still be encrypted. However, the rollbacks cannot. So it's very easy to go back in and roll back those files that were encrypted.
Hmm.
In addition to that, if you have the protect part of the package, we actually start recognizing beyond signature-based recognition of, files being encrypted, because we do that as well. But we actually have AI back behind there that will notice that a whole bunch of files are being changed at once, even though we don't recognize it as a ransomware signature, and we'll go, something's going wrong here, and we'll alert you, and you have the capability of stopping it. Same
Hmm.
thing with, it's kind of a side case, but relevant as well to the security posture, is if you have a user who, say, accesses 20, 30 files a day on a regular basis, and all of a sudden they are downloading 100, 200 in a day, that's an alarm bell as well. And so, if somebody's exfiltrating a large amount of data at one time.
Okay, that's very interesting. What about somebody loses their laptop? Like that happens, right? And they have data on there that they need to protect. How do we make sure that data is either inaccessible or remote wipe, maybe, or how do you prevent that data from being kind of captured if somebody finds a laptop on the street and says, let me see what's on here?
So first of all, I'll go back to what I was saying before. By default, we don't store the files on the device.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. We only cache them as you're using them. So that's number one. So it lowers the profile of risk right there. Now, I'm not 100% sure on laptops, so I'm not going to say it's for laptops, but I do know that for the mobile apps, because we do have mobile apps that allow you to access the Egnyte repository as well, you can remotely wipe the Egnyte data from those mobile devices.
Very interesting. Brent pops back in here. He's one of our very avid question askers, but always good questions.
All right.
Are you friendly to a second backup by another vendor? So kind of similar question I brought up before. Don't put all eggs in one vendor basket? Question mark.
Yep. Also a very common question that I get. And so I am already working with a couple of vendors to see if there's something that we can do for this. Now, internally, there's something. Now, I'm not going to call it a backup, because if I called it a backup, you guys would all call me out on it, because it's not a backup. But we do have what we call public cloud connector. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to take a copy of your Egnyte data and put it into either Azure or AWS. Now, we don't do that just for having an extra copy of the data, although that certainly is a use case and could be. But we put it there so that you can then run Azure and AWS processes on that data. But you could just as easily implement some type of backup to back up that synchronized copy, and therefore, solve that third-party checkbox problem, because that's really what I call it. The data in Egnyte is very safe, but I understand that a lot of people have a third-party checkbox that they have to check for either some type of compliance or client requirement or insurance requirement, something like that.
Okay. Of course, compliances, since we were on that topic, right? Could be HIPAA, could be SOX, it could be now that newer CMMC or something like that. How I assume you guys have some sort of compliance standard to help with all of these, or obviously with HIPAA, you would need to do like a BAA or something of that nature. So how does all that work?
Yep. So we have, purpose-built configurations for things like HIPAA, PCI DSS, for the various state and regulations like CCPA. And, I was actually surprised the other day, because I was being walked through a demo of the protection package, and you would be amazed at how many states I didn't know have some type of compliance in place. All right.
They're all I think they're all copying each other at some level, but yeah.
Pretty much, but some of them are a little bit different. Well, we allow you to check the checkbox for those different state requirements. and then it automatically adds in the searches for those particular types of data.
Okay. Well,
I'm going to grab my water.
That's okay. You're absolutely allowed to grab your order. I'm actually poking around on your website right now. Ton of integrations. I mean, ton of integration. Let me share my screen. Look at this, guys. Look at all these integrations. I mean, seems like 14 years you've been able to pile some up. I mean, what are the most popular integrations that you get asked about?
So the two most popular are pretty obvious because they're going to be Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really cool things about both of those integrations is that they allow you to co-edit just like their native storage. So you know how you can co-edit in Microsoft Word? Well, you can do the same thing and still use Egnyte and still have the data in one place and have it in that file structure that you're used to and have those protection pieces on top of it. Now, strategy wise, the reason why we have all of these integrations is because, again, we're organization centric. We're more concerned about the business being able to do its job rather than the individual. And so we have all of these integrations so that Egnyte can fit within the workflow of the business, not the individual.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, everybody always loves, all their tools to work with each other. There's no question about that. I mean, this is actually, I was just poking around again. This is actually not a bad overview right here, right? Like the little diagram, by the way. For anyone who might be chiming into this internationally, is this just a US facing product? What about Canada, Europe, APAC, or because there's data sovereignty out of the US requirements, right? I think.
Yep. We provide this service to people all over the world. We solve for data sovereignty in most places that require it. It's literally just, asking us and we'll let you know. And then even then we have some options for maybe putting it in your own instances. So yeah, and GDPR, obviously we solve for that. So yeah, we international, not a problem. I was just on the phone with a Canadian partner the other day, making sure that we could do Canadian data sovereignty there.
Yeah, everybody wants to keep the data within their borders these days, outside of the
Makes
US.
sense.
No, I get it. Totally get it. What are the most common, use cases from an MSP standpoint? I mean, obviously MSP service many industries, but what are the top 1, 2, 3 industries that you find reoccurring from a partner level?
Well, the one, that we're trying to tell everybody is the file server replacement piece, because everybody still has legacy file servers out there. Sure. Obviously, everybody's working from anywhere now. So it's much better if we put that data in the cloud, make it more collaborative, make it easier to get to. They don't have to have as big a pipe or, as big of an VPN or as many VPN licenses if they move it out to the cloud. All the benefits of that. Any industry that requires data compliance, finance, insurance, medical, all of those are prime. One of the examples that we do particularly well in, although it's not served by MSPs as commonly, is life sciences. Now, we do have a number of MSPs who are very successful in that space. As you would expect, a lot of niche MSPs are highly successful when they have that expertise. So life sciences, highly regulated, and therefore we can solve those problems with very specific configurations of the Egnyte product. I mentioned construction, obviously that's a big one, because it's also a big one served by a lot of MSPs, right? A lot of MSPs serve construction companies because a lot of construction companies fall within that 50 to 100 employee sweet spot for MSPs. So that's a big one. It really depends. Everybody needs the file server piece, I think. That would be my opinion. If I was an MSP again, everybody's file server would be in the cloud, and having seen a lot of solutions, this is the one that I would use. Beyond that, If you have any need at all to make sure that the data is safe and compliant, you need that level of, you've got to be able to classify the data. You've got to know when it's not in its right place so you can put it back. You've got to have the right permissions in order to, let's take a traditional file structure, right? Where maybe you have a finance folder and the whole finance department has access to that finance folder. Well, you also have payroll inside of that folder. With a lot of cloud file sharing products, you can't supersede the file structure permissions. So payroll has to inherit the permissions from the folder above it. With Egnyte, you don't have to do that. You can set that payroll folder to have totally separate permissions than the parent folder that it's in. In other solutions, you'd actually have to move that payroll folder out to the root and in order to give it separate, or unique permissions.
Yeah, that definitely is challenging. What about, preventing access from outside of I guess in Microsoft land, they call this conditional access, right? Hey, we only want access from people that are, in and around these areas, like rather than international traffic, stuff like that. Do you have anything around that?
We do. So, to get into more specifics, they probably need to talk to an account manager. We also have solutions and engineers who can answer those and actually show it on screen so they get the specific answer. But in addition to that, we do some cool stuff, like if I'm logged in, like right now from Raleigh, and then my login is used out in California at the same time, that gets flagged. So we do some of those little additional, just kind of smart things to make sure that, that hinky stuff isn't going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely bubbling up to the top. So if you were to tell someone, hey, don't, I guess let me rewind and rephrase this question in my brain. What size organization does this really play in, right? Is there a sweet spot, or is there a too big or a too small is kind of where I'm trying to get to.
No, we have some very large companies using Egnyte. One that I know I'm allowed to say, because it's been used in a lot of social media lately, is Red Bull, right? So we have, a lot of large enterprise size customers on the direct side using this product, all the way down to people who, probably, I would say maybe 5 or more employees is probably, but that's pretty much everybody. Yeah. And really the only reason I say that is because, that's where you really start needing that collaboration. You need to make sure your structure is good so that you don't have all these different copies of files all over the place and things like that. So really could be used for any size, but, really any business and up, of 5 employees is going to be able to take advantage of the features here. But then also you have the protection stuff. So really anybody who's in a high regulated industry, even if you're less than 5 employees, this stuff is, even if it's not required today, it's going to be required in a couple of years anyway.
This is true for sure. When data is transiting between the machine that's editing that file and wherever your data center is that data encrypted in transit?
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's encrypted in transit as well as at rest in our repository.
Cool. I'm sure everyone asks this question. Do you have MFA?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. MFA, and you said SSO earlier. So for the guys who are doing, Azure SSO, or I guess Duo is very popular right now in MSP.
Yep. Or Okta.
Okta. Yeah. Cool. So for the other thing that's worth mentioning, like, for people who are still married to a OneDrive or a Google Drive, do you find that there's a learning curve to shift people off of those 2 products to Egnyte? Because I fear that people would like some stuff on the left, some stuff on the right, and that's what you don't want, I think.
Yeah, so it's kind of a unique situation. We don't see a lot of it. Right now, I think we're in this time period where everybody is still familiar with the traditional file server. So there's not a lot of retraining to put them back on that type of file structure.
Mhm.
They already know OneDrive. Now, if for whatever reason they still need to retain OneDrive and use it, maybe because of some type of other integration, we can still add our protection features on top of that OneDrive. So you don't have to use the repository and collaboration piece. You can just use the compliance piece on top of OneDrive.
That's good. Gives you a little bit of flexibility, right? But
Right.
I assume in a perfect world, your ideal expectation is, hey, replace what either cohabitate until your server's end of life, or just don't replace your server, just move to Egnyte and do distributed.
Right. Because I want to save people from having a physical file server. It's inconvenient. They break. They have to be replaced. There's just a lot of, there's maintenance that goes on with a file server. There's patches, and yes, we've learned how to automate all that, but I mean, everybody on this call knows how bad patching can be. I mean, it's one of those things that we live with it, because patches can go bad. And so there's always labor, may not be this month, but it's probably going to be next month or the month after, where you have to log into that server and actually spend tech hours. And so those kind of inefficiencies is where I actually see the big benefit to the MSP. To the client, it's familiarity, ease of use, the added functionality of being able to collaborate in the cloud and easily, share stuff with people outside of their organization. But for the MSP, it's the reduction in cost of having to maintain that file structure on a physical device, where I think is of huge advantage to the MSP.
As part of your MSP program, is there a onboarding cost? I'm not asking for prices, just general,
Yep.
just being general. Is there a termed agreements? Does each customer have their own lane, or is it really start with the MSP first? Like, how does the program really work?
So the program works. There's no fee to sign up. There's no onboarding fee, unless you want to take advantage of that rapid professional services onboarding program, like I talked about before. But we do have training that's available for selling it, for deploying it, and for administering it, all within that new partner portal. In terms of agreements, really have to talk to an account manager. There are some terms, but there aren't really any minimums. If there are, they're very low. I think we sell, it's like a 5 user minimum is the smallest package. But it's very easy to get started. There's literally no cost, and we have all of these resources available to help you get up and running and learn what the solution is about. And of course, you can sign up for your own trial, so you can actually have a couple of weeks to play with the solution before you put it in front of any clients.
100%. Is it branded as Egnyte when it's positioned to the customer? Is it co-branded or white labeled? How is the presentation to the end customer?
So I would say that it is not 100% white labeled. However, there are branding options so that you can actually make it look like either yours or the client's, because it is brandable by domain.
Okay. All right. Well, what else haven't we asked? I tried to shake the tree here and ask most of the stuff that I would think people would ask. I come from an MSP as well, right? So these are the things I would have asked in a call. What are the other common questions that we didn't touch so far?
Oh, I think we actually did a pretty good job of covering most of them. Because one of the things about it is that it's not a complicated solution, right? I think that's one of the great things about it, is that it doesn't take the MSP learning a lot of new things to implement and manage. And I especially mean that on the compliance side. So we've done a lot of work on the back end to help you with the compliance stuff so you don't have to know as much about what it takes to be compliant. We warn you about things, you check a box to say that you need HIPAA compliance. And we're going to start looking at all the data, and we're going to tell you if anything looks out of place in terms of HIPAA compliance. Right?
Yeah. So
No.
Brent asks, is there a minimum? It sounds like, Brent, the minimum package that you can buy could be like for 5 users, right? So,
right.
But it doesn't sound like there's a reseller minimum. It sounds like it just sounds like you turn on a package per customer. It sounds like is what it could be. Oh no.
Well, and this is where you really need to chat with a partner account manager, because I am not a salesperson.
No,
For as long as I've been in the vendor channel, which is about 8 years now, I have prided myself in not being a salesperson. So I specifically stay away from those conversations.
No, but these are the hallway barroom questions that pop up, right? So
right.
All good. Well, let's just before we get to to the end of the line here, where does somebody go if they want to learn more? If they want to talk to somebody about the partner program, who do they talk to? And like, if they wanted a trial, where do they start?
All right. So the best place to go is just egnyte.com, and it's egnyte.com/MSP. We have a whole separate page section on the website for that. That's where you can find out more information about the partner program. You can sign up to register to be a partner, which again, there's no cost. So there's no obligation to sign up as a partner. It literally is just going to get you the resources to find out if this is something that is going to be applicable to your clients. And I forgot, it's actually spelled on my screen there. So, so the spelling is there. They can always reach out to me.
I was gonna say, tell me, talk to Eric, and you're gonna get a special. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, they might charge you more actually if you say you talk to me. No, but really, if you want to reach out to me personally, my Twitter handle is there on the screen, but pretty much on any social media except TikTok. I don't do TikTok. If you type in, I know the reasons why I should. It's just not my platform of choice.
I'm out on TikTok too, but Sade on my team loves TikTok, and so does Alec on my team too. They're TikTok, they're TikTok gurus. But I tell them one day your bank account might be empty. I don't know.
But if you search for Eric, Anthony, and MSP, those 3 separate words on pretty much any social media, you're going to find me. And feel free to direct message me there. That's fine, and I'll get you in touch with the right person.
Christina, Brent says, "Can you say hi?"
Yes. Hi. Hi to everyone. Yeah, no, definitely anybody can reach out to Eric or me. We can definitely help you with anything that's program related.
Because I apologize. I have monopolized the conversation. Christina, why don't you just take a minute or two and talk about the marketing stuff that we are doing specifically for MSPs?
Yeah, sure. So we basically have a partner portal that we invite all of our partners to join once they've signed up to be part of the program. And in that portal, we've created different playbooks that will help you with your marketing efforts. So some of them will have how to ask the right questions. So like, for example, in life sciences, that's a really big one. It'll have some email templates. It has like some social things that you can use. So like we're trying to package up in little different things that that partners can use to attract their own clients and to grow their business. But aside from that, we also try to help our partners do things. So like we do collaboration webinars where we'll invite only the customers or prospects of our partner, and we keep it outside of Egnyte. So we use a platform that doesn't feed into our Salesforce, for example. So that way we're not trying to take your clients. Like I know, George, you had mentioned that before. So we're there just to help you present and to give you a platform to actually do the webinar, but not to steal your clients, of course. So we do a lot of those kind of things. And then, of course, we have a lot of expertise in different verticals. So we're always happy to help joint try to sell our Egnyte to one of your prospects. So yeah, we're trying to do more and more. Eric and I haven't been at Egnyte for, well, it's going to be almost a year, Eric. But we're trying to grow the program more and more. So like it's our program 2.0 now that we're here and doing a lot of things.
You grew through COVID. How about them apples?
Yeah,
That's right. And there's an important point that kind of differentiates our partner program a little bit, that Christina, pointed out, and that is we have some in-house expertise in those specific industries like life sciences, like construction, where if you're not heavy as an MSP in those verticals yet, but it's something you have clients in your region that you could take advantage of providing services to those clients, we have the internal expertise that we can, help you co-sell. We'll get on calls with your clients and help you co-sell Egnyte, especially into those more complicated situations. So that's a differentiator as well. We'll even put, solutions engineers or sales engineers on a phone call if you have a prospect that needs to be shown a proof of concept for how this is going to work specifically for their situation. We'll do that.
Awesome. Hey, it sounds like you guys, or Egnyte has brought your team together to really go down MSP lane, which is great. I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people try and grow through the channel, and it's a very special sandbox where you almost need certain check boxes for the right to play, right? So it sounds like you guys are doing all the right things, and I surely I might even take a look at it for a customer of mine that I think may have, graphic design customer I mentioned earlier that could fit. So why not? Who knows? Might work out well. So for everyone who was watching this, again, this has been recorded. It's going to be online at mspinitiative.com under sessions. Don't hesitate to reach out to either Eric or Christina on everything except for TikTok. Nope, no TikTok here either. You can't find me there either, but you can find them on every other platform. And it sounds like there's a no obligation way to take a look, right? And clearly have spelled out some good benefits to where the other solutions that we're all familiar with kind of fall short. Hey, free is great or included is great, but if it falls short on the actual end result, let's talk about how to get there. And there's still a lot of file servers out there. Let's not fool anyone. So,
yep.
Awesome, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys for jumping on. I learned a lot about Egnyte today. I mean, I knew a little bit, but now I really got a big picture. I think a lot of people, I think Egnyte's still new to the channel. So this is going to be a great session for anyone that needs a little bit of a crash course on what they do and who they are and what they're solving for. And are we going to see you? I think you guys are pretty, event driven a little bit. So I think you said ASCII earlier. Are there any other events that you?
Yeah. So we're
IT
doing
Nation.
Exchange.
Mhm.
Yep. Well, Christina, actually, this is more you're the one who
My
coordinates
wheelhouse.
all this stuff. I just go to them.
Yes. Now we're going to Exchange next week. So that's our first face-to-face. But we'll be at pretty much all of the ASCIIs that are happening face-to-face for the rest of the year. So that I think there's one in DC, Houston, Raleigh. So there's several of those, but we'll be at IT Nation. We'll be at Datocom. We have a few events also in EMEA. So we're doing Managed Summit in London and in Amsterdam as well. So the team is going to be going around and come and see us. Come and say hi at the booth. Most of the time, Eric and I will be there along with
That's
other
fantastic.
ones.
See that? The people who showed up online are the people you're going to see in person. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for watching. Remember, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time and online at any time on mspinitiative.com. Thank you very much, guys, for jumping on board. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for
Thanks.
having us.
All right.